What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Yes, I am a little under the weather. Don't make a fuss about it. I am recovering. It's just a little, change of the climate and stuff. But I'm okay. I'll survive. So, just the day after I did my video about the October surprise, we got an October surprise from Daniel Sheehan. And it's a disappointing one. I already had told you that I wasn't expecting much from this, but I definitely wasn't expecting for it to be pushed back. So here's Danny Sheehan on his Twitter account. The National Archives and Records Administration has now instructed in a memo AC02-2025 that all executive branch records subject to disclosure must be submitted by September the 30th, 2025, instead of the original legislatively mandated October 20th, 2024. But the agency requests that records be turned over on a rolling basis rather than at the final moment. Ultimately, records will be included in the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Records Collection, with specific guidelines for metadata and redactions. I am extremely disappointed by the delay of the submission deadline, as Subtitle C of the NDAA FY24 specifically mandates that all records be submitted 300 days after the signing of the Act, which is October the 20th of 2024. Delay and obfuscation remain the status quo, unfortunately, but we're pushing back. So that happened. This is something that I guess many of us could have been expecting already. I don't believe that based on what happened recently with the Immaculate Constellation, the whistleblower coming forward with Michael Schellenberger, Mr. Matthew Fallon, who is the senior science reporter at the Daily Mail, coming out with that recent article with Christopher Mellon about this alleged mothership throwing up some smaller UAP. I don't think it's a coincidence that there is this level of pushback already from the powers that be. So what can we do? For now, I think that Mr. Danny Sheehan is going to continue with his regularly scheduled program, which is the World Disclosure Day, I think it was called, that is going to start on the 20th as well. Global Disclosure Day, yeah. There's going to be a number of speakers on that event, but they were all expecting for this October surprise to happen without any delays. And the fact that they have changed it now to September the 30th next year gives them a lot more time to either cover their tracks or just keep delaying the inevitable at this point, because more and more people from the mainstream are starting to pick up on this. And you can't really deny, whatever you think about the phenomenon, you can't deny the engagement that it's getting from people. I just mentioned Matthew Fallon. Lex Friedman talks about it often. Joe Rogan talks about it often. Regardless of what you think of those guys, they are the new mainstream. You need to realize this. Legacy media has been compromised for many, many decades. Yes, the majority of people still values more a New York Times article than a Joe Rogan Experience podcast. But more people consume a Joe Rogan Experience podcast than a New York Times article right now. Actually, a Joe Rogan Experience podcast is one of the most consumed media in the world. Whether you like Joe or not, that doesn't matter. And I see people giving shit to Joe constantly, for his political views and his worldviews in general. And although some of his views are very warranted to be questioned, I don't agree with a lot, if not most, of what he says or claims. The reality is that Joe, although he doesn't seem like he believes that much that the phenomenon is real, he is allowing for this conversation to happen on his platform. And I think that when people criticize people like Joe, they miss the forest for the trees completely, because Joe has the biggest platform and he's allowing for a conversation that has been suppressed for decades to happen. And even though he does seem sometimes that like he thinks it's all BS, he still allows it to happen. And that should hold a value on its own. I think that's the value of Joe Rogan, not necessarily that disclosure is gonna come from his show or something like that. I don't think it is. But I do think that him allowing for people like Commander Fravor or David Grush or others within the movement. He recently had Lou Elizondo and Michael Schellenberger, and he spoke to Bob Lazar, he spoke to Jeremy Corbell, he spoke to George Knapp. All of these people have been trying to get the secret out for decades. And I think that Joe deserves that credit at least. Whatever you think about him politically or ideologically, even he said multiple times before that he is a meathead and that people should not listen to what he says. However, the people that are on his show as guests, many of them are worth a listen, at least. So I think that what comes next after this news from Danny is to just keep trusting and trying to decipher what comes out in media and what is going to happen at the hearings on November the 13th. It was very recent that during a weaponized episode, Corbell, who also happened to confirm that this alleged Immaculate Constellation program exists, said that if the upcoming witnesses that are going to testify in front of Congress are not divulged before the hearings, we will get to know more details about this alleged program. And I don't know, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around a lot of this stuff, to be honest with you. I think there's so much noise in the background when any of these people come forward and say, this is real, this is not, this is happening. You gotta wait for this. It's coming soon. You know, the usual gist of it. I think that I get why a lot of people are a little fed up with this type of behavior. And it's not that it's their fault. Like, they tend to get a lot of different obstacles in front of them before they release some information. And this pushback that we're seeing right now, according to Danny, does have a lot to do with the recent occurrences, such as this program and the whistleblower and other stuff. And I think that's going to continue happening. So all we have left as the people who are eager to know what's coming is to just continue trying to wait for more information to drop. It doesn't matter if it's like on a new podcast or on a new show or on a new YouTube channel or in here or with Christian Harloff or with Patrick, or it doesn't matter. We just have to keep an eye out for the information that is serving the cause. And I know that a lot of us are trying to get the information out by any means that we can, but it's sometimes it's really difficult, especially for people like who are journalists, because we understand how we need to keep protecting our sources in order for them to not go through any trouble. I'm going to give you an example. There are a couple of sources that I'm speaking to that one of them is a veteran who has a disability. And he has an interesting story to tell, but he's not going to come forward with his name and his face because he's on full disability, and the government is paying full disability. So if he comes forward and talks about what he's seen and what he knows, he is in danger of losing this disability. So I understand there's a lot of people like that that cannot risk their livelihood just for coming forward in public. So people who criticize journalists who keep sources should understand this. It's not a fact that we want to keep people like on the edge of their seats or you'll see it's going to happen soon. No, it's not like that. I mean, there are people who do that, unfortunately, and they are one of the main issues and the main reasons that this topic is not taken as seriously as it probably should be. But at the same time, a lot of these people do bring a lot of awareness to the topic itself. So it is a double edged sword, a little bit. Meanwhile, people who have been doing journalism for, in my case, almost 15 years, we do struggle a little bit when we see someone who's in this space who starts creating content and does content just for the sake of the views, or they regard it as just a business. I don't think this topic should be considered just a business. I am not against people who want to make a living, a decent living, out of reporting on this stuff. I know because I am trying to do it in the most transparent and honest way possible. But that does not mean that it hasn't happened before. Like, I get some people who are journalists and get into this topic and they lose their way along the way. And then they open like a major store of products that are questionable, or they try to monopolize certain topics, or, you know, and some of them have become like extremely powerful in the space, in the sense of they become some sort of an authority, and power corrupts, you know. It almost always happens. There are very few people in history who have not been corrupted by power. I would ask you guys to name a few if you remember. Who hasn't been corrupted by power? And historically, in your country, there are people who weren't refused to be corrupted by power, and they didn't make it out alive. So I guess the system is kind of rigged in that sense, and that is also part of all of this. This delayed disclosure is now. People talk about controlled disclosure or catastrophic disclosure. I'm starting to call it delayed disclosure, bro. But that's just me. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this latest update from Danny Sheehan of the delayed October surprise. That is not going to be October anymore, apparently. It's going to be September the 30th, 2025. Why do you think this happened? And why do you think the pushback is real? How will this affect the hearings that are coming up on November 13th? And how will this affect other topics and other occurrences that are happening? There are many documentaries, stream shows about the topic that have been announced recently. I'm going to be covering a lot of them. There's one from George Knapp. There's another one from MGM where we can see Dr. Jacques Vallée appearing there. Maybe those can do something, but I get why people like are not on board with documentaries or media pieces to be the catalyst that brings about disclosure. There are a lot of people in ufology and in this topic and the paranormal in general who will not take anything but scientific papers or hearings or legislation, which is the most official way to prove anything. That's true. It's not a book, it's not a documentary, but I think that pieces of media do play a major role in whatever we're trying to do here. Because remember, guys, when the hearings took place last July, a month before that, David Grush came out on News Nation. That's a piece of media. And if it hadn't been for that, I don't know if we would have gotten the hearings at all from any of them. So it is important to keep in mind that media is playing one of the pivotal roles in all of this. And I just wish people understood that mainstream media is no longer what you think it is. Mainstream media is the internet, essentially, now. That's what it is, because that's the most consumed media in the world. Mainstream media are those podcasts that I mentioned, and it's no longer these networks. They're no longer mainstream. I don't think they are. What do you think? So let me know in the comments. If you like the content you see, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel in any other way, you can donate. I'm going to leave a few links in the description. The PayPal account is in Spanish, but I think it's pretty intuitive. So if you're having problems, maybe there's like a section in the corners where you can change the language, I think. There are other links that I'm going to leave there so you can support the channel or get yourself something if you want. That will help too. But as long as you just like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification, you will be helping me tremendously already. So thank you. Every help is very appreciated. And without further ado, I'm going to leave you until tomorrow's video. Bye.